Welcome back to part 2 of this CD update listening pile whatever video. You're at Ground Zero Salem with Pat. As always, spinning in the background, we've got the Born Dead Consume split. Consume is the one playing in the background right now. Jay from Disrupt, Jay Styles, is the singer, and I think he plays guitar. Love his fucking maniacal vocals. Like pretty much everything the guy's done. This is no exception. Good recording. So, second half of the stack. These go back to a couple months ago. A lot of metal in this. A lot of death metal. Some early proto-black metal stuff. Some current, really, really good black metal shit. One of the best black metal records of the year, in my opinion. Some classic crust. Some hardcore. A little bit of everything for you. There's your intro. Let's dive in. So we got this phlebotomized compilation. This is an EP and a demo, Devoted to God and Preach Eternal Gospels. I really like their debut, Immense Intense Suspense. Hopefully I got that right. Which is just a cool European death metal record. It's got some cool melodic riffing here and there, but a very dense, heavy kind of thing to it. Super unique record. Really enjoy it. I was curious about this because oftentimes I like demos and previous EPs better than full lengths. This wasn't really the case with this, though. It's very good, but it's not quite as great as the full lengths. It's got a lack of the hooks in the riffs that the full length does. There's some cool keyboards all over everything, lending an interesting kind of atmosphere to it that are very present and straightforward, which when you think about it, other than just like keyboards for little tinges and background stuff, it wasn't done by too many death metal bands at the time other than Nocturnus. So I feel like maybe they were kind of doing something different for the time. This is pretty early, you know. I think it's probably 92 or 93 that this stuff came out, so good on them. It's got some live tracks, as CDs like this tend to have. It came out on Vic Records reissue from a few years back. Another Vic reissue. Mefisto, the Megalomania puzzle, compiling the Megalomania and puzzle demos. Perfect first wave black metal stuff from Sweden. As far as I could gather from reading about them in that Swedish death metal book, they were kind of mysterious dudes. They didn't really hang out with other people in the scene, I guess, and they were kind of like, I guess, like the equivalent of like Swedish townies, you know? They were just kind of bros, apparently. But at any rate, the music's fantastic. It's pretty much everything you'd want for first wave black metal, you know, coming out of sort of a thrashier influence with the riffs, but somewhat amateurish drumming that's kind of making it up as it's going along. A slight kind of falling apart kind of quality, a little bit of just noisiness and evil to it. I could definitely say that if you like very early Sodom, the demos and In the Sign of Evil, if you like maybe some newer bands like Communion, Mefisto's definitely up your alley if you haven't heard them. This is Polluted Inheritance with Ecocide. I don't know if they were fans of Earth Crisis or not, but it's called Ecocide. German band from the 90s, also on Vic Records. Decent full length. Nothing really to write home about, but it fills my need to listen to good, almost American style, sort of chunky, slightly technical death metal. Got a vibe similar to, like, maybe not quite as well executed, but similar to Disincarnate, James Murphy's band there, or maybe the very, very first Suffocation EP, Human Waste. It's along those lines, and it's good. Mortification, Scrolls of the Megaloth. It's a reissue on Nuclear Blast, but it's also on a label called Metalville, which makes me question whether or not this is legit. At any rate, Australian Christian death metal. You know, I had this propped up in my brain for so long. I have a couple of close friends that sing the praises of this record to the heavens, left and right, and I'm not saying at all that it's super disappointing or really bad. They take a couple of liberties with longer songs and go off on some interesting, sort of almost instrumental passages and stuff like that. But the production's really thin. The guitar tone is a little bit on the on the flaccid side. It's good, but maybe it's just because I was listening to it next to the next 2 CDs I'm going to talk about that it seemed kind of weak in comparison, and those 2 CDs are Monstrosity's second and third records, respectively, Millenium and In Dark Purity. These both rip, with In Dark Purity probably being the stronger of the 2. Millenium's great. I'm not even going to talk about the cover art. We all know what the deal is with the cover art on these. Doesn't matter. The music completely blazes. It's the most technically proficient Florida death metal I've heard since the first time I listened to like Morbid Angel. And there are some similarities there. They have that really precise, hyper fast picked guitar, lots of like incredibly precise blasting. Everything is just so on point and just thrown at you neatly and impactfully, and it just bowls you over. It's really just extremely well done death metal, and I fucking love it. Not really much else to say than that. Then I have 2 CDs by Funereal Presence. The brand new one, Acacias, and their first one, The Archer Takes Aim. I bought these at about the same time. I had not heard of these guys at all. My buddy Ben texted me and was like, have you heard this yet? Didn't know that it was the guy from Negative Plane's newish band. This first one came out like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Not really super in the know about Negative Plane. I have one of their records and I like it a lot. But this blows that out of the water. Both of these only have 4 songs each, like 4 long, epic, sprawling songs that feel like they're over in 10 minutes and you still want more because it's so good. Again, sort of got a first wave bent to it, a certain anthemic kind of fist in the air sort of thing, but also weirdly transcendent and just perfectly written. Well done. And up next, another 2 CD banger. Kind of a theme here. Welcome to the Orgy by Deviated Instinct and Reopening Old Wounds, also by Deviated Instinct. This compiles some early demos, and this compiles a 7-inch and 2 LPs. The Welcome to the Orgy 7-inch, Rock and Roll Conformity LP, and Guttural Breath LP. This early crust scene from the late 80s in the UK is really fascinating to me because it's a form of crossover. It's, you know, guys from the punk scene expanding and playing something more towards metal, but unlike bands like the Crumbsuckers, who were hardcore dudes from Long Island that got really good at playing their instruments and kind of evolved into somewhere between hardcore and metal, this seems like, you know, punk dudes from the hardcore punk background that are punching above their weight, trying to play stuff that's heavy and metal influenced after probably listening to Celtic Frost and Bathory, and kind of trying to leap ahead and just kind of doing the best with what they had with probably shoddy equipment and not the chops of already established, well-known crossover bands. And it's really good. I like what comes out of that experiment. This very early stuff is super anarcho-punk. It's got that sort of March beat, you know, Crass Records inspired kind of thing, but then they lurch into like almost Celtic Frost kind of riffs, and they get progressively more heavy and more metal and better at their instruments as they go on all the 7-inch and LP material, where you finally arrive at the Guttural Breath LP, and it's you know, it's still very basic, but it's definitely way more along the lines of like something closer to early UK death metal. You can see how it's only a hair or two of a separation from Bolt Thrower and Benediction and stuff like that. But yeah, very fucking cool. From the same scene, I got this compilation of Prophecy of Doom demos and 7-inches and stuff entitled Darkness Collection. And Prophecy of Doom is a tough band to get a hold of a lot of their stuff. This was the cheapest thing that I could find, and it's a cool odds and ends kind of compilation. These guys are a little bit more adept and a little bit heavier and straightforward in the metal department, more so than Deviated Instinct. They're a little bit more together and a little bit more on the straight up brutal side too. Could really hold their own probably next to like very early Bolt Thrower in terms of like playing ability. But, you know, there's still that grimy punk underbelly to it that I really, really like. Definitely a great one. And this is Blood Chalice from Finland up next. It's their new record, Sepulchral Chance of Self-Destruction. I just saw these guys down the road in Revere, Mass. A few weeks ago, and I picked up their CD. They were really good live, straight up bestial, you know, not trying to be anything other than a war metal or bestial band, but they did it really well. You know, they had the jacked bald guy with chains wrapped around him and nails through their gauntlets, like the whole nine. What's really impressive is that they managed to capture that kind of chaos from, you know, from Blasphemy and the like, but they really have something to hold on to in terms of like memorability and good riffs, which is a rarity to me with a lot of bands from this scene. I feel like a lot of that shit just goes over my head, other than the originals, you know, the OGs, and I really like this record a lot. I was surprised. I just bought it to support like a touring band, but it's a good one. Next, we've got Magic Circle. Brand new Magic Circle, Departed Souls. Came out a few months ago. Very much looking forward to this. I loved Journey Blind, the last one, and the first record as well. With this one, they're keeping up with their sort of traditional Doom, Dio Sabbath inspired kind of thing, but they're reaching maybe a little bit more towards Rainbow and Uriah Heep. There's the addition of keyboards on this. There's a bit of a warmer 70s kind of vibe on it. Brendan sounds better than ever in the vocal department. So they're evolving things and mixing it up a little bit, which I think is necessary and also really works. This came out on $20 spin. Highly recommended. And then we've got Stinky Rats. It's a cute name. Stinky Rats from Italy. Early 80s, early mid-80s Italian hardcore stuff. I've been digging a little bit more of the stuff lately, if you've been watching, you know, getting into Impact and Wretched and stuff like that. I hear this name mentioned a lot, kind of alongside those bands. This came out on FOAD, and one thing that sets this band apart from their national compatriots is, at least on the full length on here, there's a little bit more gloom, a little bit more of like a spooky, kind of gothy, death rocky vibe, which a lot of bands do nowadays, I feel like, but back then I don't think it was so common, except for like maybe Rudimentary Peni. So that's a cool thing to hear, and yeah, it's a good, catchy, solid Italian hardcore. Then, this discography by a band called DFA from Canada, that were around from 2000 to 2004, as you can see right there. This came out on Unrest Records. This band was an early 2000s crossover band, which was something starting to gain steam again at the time. A lot of faster, thrashier hardcore back then was starting to take off. I've talked about the rise of like Tear It Up and Nine Shocks Terror being two of the bigger bands from that scene. DFA were right along with that, but they mixed thrash metal, and I believe Municipal Waste was starting out right around then, but they hadn't blown up yet. Bones Brigade from Boston was another one that was kind of starting to bring the speed and thrash metal back into hardcore a little bit. And DFA were really effective at doing it. I don't really hear too many people mention them these days, but I saw them live once in Buffalo, and they were really good then. But yeah, I mean, it's crossover. There's crossed skateboards behind a skull there, so you know what you're getting. And I think it's really good. I'd recommend it to anybody that likes modern or old crossover. Alright, so that's it. That's it for now. We'll get into vinyl and we'll get into tapes soon. See you soon. Until then, take care of yourselves.